Welcome to another episode of the Bandage Podcast, a weekly wrap-up of the most trending healthcare news. Each week, we'll discuss the latest in healthcare, health IT, and compliance.
In this week's episode, we discuss how drug overdose patients don't test for synthetic opioids, Milwaukee's new overdose death map, and how the final rule may increase health premiums. Let's wrap things up. This is episode 150 for the week of August 29th. I'm Matt Moneypenny.
And I'm Elia Meltzer.
And before we get started, our diagnosis code for this week is V94.12XS, or bather struck by non-powered watercraft, sequela.
So I'm very happy to say that this has not actually happened to me, but I've come rather close. So
you just bathe. Why would it be bather over swimmer? That's my question. No one bathes in a lake. No one bathes in a lake.
I mean, I guess it depends on like local dialects and things. I guess it doesn't matter if you're swimming, but as long as like you're in the water and you get struck by a canoe or a kayak or a pedal boat, then this would apply to you.
If you get struck by a paddle boat, those things go like 2 miles per hour. You need to, you probably shouldn't be swimming. So.
Well, like maybe your hand gets stuck in the rudders, right? Because like the pedal boat has the rudders, it does like have moving parts, so that way it does go forward. If a body part gets stuck in the moving parts, you could be in some serious trouble.
Maybe.
You might.
I have no idea. But this is also the sequela time, so at that point,
you're just
don't swim anymore. Just stop swimming in lakes.
Yeah.
Stick to pools.
But even in pools, you could have trouble. Maybe just like stay in the house permanently.
Yeah, just live in a bubble. What you can do.
Protective bubble.
Anyways, let's go into it. First up, we have leading cause of overdose isn't tested. A new study shows that only 5% of drug overdose patients admitted to the emergency department are tested for fentanyl and synthetic opioids, despite these drugs being the leading cause of death for Americans who are 18 to 45 years of age. Opioids were involved in 75% of all drug overdose deaths in 2020, and 82.3% of all opioid overdose deaths involved synthetic opioids. Typically, patients visiting an emergency room for a drug overdose or poisoning are given toxicology testing panels, which help identify the drugs in their system. However, synthetic opioids are not usually detected in routine toxicology panels and require separate screenings. Last year, researchers developed a predictive analytics model to forecast drug-related fatality rates for the next year by county. Using the model, research teams can assess drug markets, healthcare access, demographics, and the geographic spread of overdoses as predictors to generate risk scores. Well, more opioid news, lots of developments going on here. Whoa.
It is a crisis, and so the more that you understand the crisis, the better you can like mitigate it, find out what are the causes. But I'm really surprised that like we know that opioids cause a lot of death, right? We know that there's a lot of overdoses, and yet there aren't as many screenings as there supposed to be. And like the more we get into like synthetic things are probably more potent, they're probably cheaper to make, they're probably cheaper to buy. So since they are more potent and they're more accessible, why wouldn't you test them? Why wouldn't they be one of the first things you test? Maybe the tests are more expensive, but like if we know that so many overdoses are caused by this, why isn't it routine?
I don't know.
Makes
sense. I didn't know that there was an all-natural version of opioids as opposed to synthetic opioids. So that learns something new every day.
I mean, I guess synthetic opioids would be starting in the lab and finishing in the lab, whereas quote-unquote natural opioids would be derived from the poppy flower.
I guess.
And the seeds would then be taken to the lab.
Does fentanyl use poppy seeds? I don't know. I don't know. But either way,
it sucks. And something needs to change.
We're making progress, though. One step at a time. Progress is good. Baby steps.
Agreed. On a similar note, overdose interactive map. Over the last decade, drug overdose deaths have steadily increased with records set year after year. It is a crisis which is becoming more complex and more lethal and continues to evolve. A seemingly self-diversifying supply of fentanyl analogs drives the death toll. Wisconsin State's Department of Health Services, or DHS, last week issued a public health advisory on fentanyl. According to DHS data, 91% of opioid overdose deaths statewide involve synthetic opioids, primarily fentanyl. From 2019 to 2021, Wisconsin's fentanyl deaths swelled by 97%. To help visualize the crisis, the Wisconsin Examiner created a map. Each point on the map color coordinated according to the cause of death, and it was once like a living human being. The map gives the address of death, excluding hospitals for patient privacy, the substances that killed the person, their gender, and age. You can even filter the points by cause of death.
Welcome to episode 150 of the podcast, where we talk about opioids.
Yeah, pretty much. But I actually got to interact with this map, and I found it really interesting. It's big. You know how on Google Maps there's those kind of like upside down teardrop shapes for different locations? It's basically a map of Wisconsin, just filled with those indicators of different colors. And when you click on them, you can see it's like white male, 38, died of like fentanyl, methamphetamine, heart attack, something like that.
Seems like a lot of data aggregation.
Yeah, but it's like you can, I think it's useful because like if you're a first responder and you see that there's like a cluster of overdoses in like a particular building, then you know to check that building regularly to prevent deaths or like arrest people for usage or for purchasing. So that way they can get help, right? Because you want to prevent them from dying. So I think this map has a lot of potential from a true crime fan side of things. I find it really interesting. It's morbid, but it's cool that we can do that. And I think from like police and first responders and like hospital visits and things like that, I think it could have a lot of use. Go Wisconsin for starting this. But I think it should be a national map. I think that would be really interesting.
Got to start somewhere, but every anytime you visualize data is always something that's kind of neat, and it helps with awareness more than anything else. It's kind of weird. You can even click on the map and click the address and then drive to it on Google Maps, and it'll give you directions. It's a little weird.
Yeah, I found like that
part's
a little strange. Like,
I think that just has to do with
this person
APIs.
died.
Yeah, I think it just has to do with API integration with Google Maps itself. So I don't think they're like, hey, go sightseeing all across Wisconsin, but
not the sites you want to see. They're probably really.
I didn't know that Wisconsin was even affected by the opioid crisis. So
well,
I think of Wisconsin, I think of farms and cheese. I don't think of opioids, but it's good.
I mean,
it's good that they're making some progress. You know,
I would say most cities are affected, but
I'm sure
where there's more people, there's probably more drugs. But I'm glad that Wisconsin's taking this step.
Step towards awareness is always good. Can't have people backing what you need from a state funding level if there is no awareness. So let's go to the next story. Surprising backfire for surprise billing. Federal government's final rule governing how arbitrators are instructed to decide payment disputes between health insurers and medical providers over surprise bills may result in higher costs for health insurance plans. The final rule implements a law aimed at keeping patients from being billed high charges in emergencies and when out-of-network providers furnish services at patients' network medical facilities. It also seeks to address a ruling by a federal district court in Texas that invalidated parts of an interim final rule issued in September of 2021, which was challenged by providers. The measure opens the door to higher costs for employers and their workers because it instructs arbitrators to give more consideration to factor beyond median contract rates. This sounds like politics.
It is a little bit. I mean, politics and healthcare intersect a lot, especially like when it comes to money and socially correct things. I mean, we know like for the last few years that like there's like a whole lot of politics when it comes to like women's rights and like what kind of operations people are allowed to have and what should be legal and what shouldn't be legal. And so when it comes to billing, it's no surprise that there's also a lot of politics involved.
Indeed. I think at the end of the day, surprise bills are bad news for patients. But of course, there's going to be more costs associated with, dealing with the legal side of finding a surprise bill and then being like, hey, this is a surprise bill, and then taking it to court. So it's unfortunate that there's more costs. I think there's probably a way to avoid increase in costs associated with health insurance for this type of thing, and maybe just leave it to legal regulations from a Department of Health and Human Services standpoint. Just have them kind of oversee all the surprise billing, just kind of like what they do with HIPAA.
But wouldn't their time just be dedicated to surprise billing, because there are so many issues? I feel like that so many resources would be taken up. I guess there isn't a better alternative, because politics and politicians are always going to fight each other, especially since we're basically a bipolar country. When it comes to politics, there's no happy medium anywhere. And so people are either going to say yes or people are going to say no, and there's going to be no budging.
Agreed. Hopefully, if it costs more money on businesses that provide health insurance, that usually means that businesses are going to find new ways to cut costs associated with health insurance, which affects the patient in a negative way. So it's kind of counterproductive to what we're trying to do with surprise billing in general. But it is what it is.
Hence, surprise backfire.
Yep. But let's go into our next segment.
BREACH, Breach Patrol. It's a breach! All of the latest cybersecurity breaches.
Welcome to Breach Patrol. We'll talk about the latest breaches all across the world. Butterfly, what do we got?
Hacker gets hacked back. I'm really a fan of this story. I'm really excited to share with you guys. The Lockbit ransomware gang is claiming responsibility for the July cyber attack against cybersecurity giant Entrust, but with a twist. The group is also accusing its latest victim of a counterattack. Entrust customers include a number of U.S. government agencies, including the Homeland Security, the Department of Energy, and the Treasury. 2 Fridays ago, Lockbit took responsibility for the July cyber attack by adding Entrust to its dark web leak website. But soon after, an apparent DDoS attack forced Lockbit's dark web leak site offline. The Lockbit members said that they believed the attack was launched by someone connected to Entrust, referencing junk internet traffic that said, quote, delete _ Entrust.com _ mother bleepers. It doesn't actually say bleep, but for the sake of the podcast, it's bleep. The Lockbit site remains largely inaccessible. Offensive cyber attacks or hacking back against cyber criminals, such as launching a DDoS attack against unwilling participants, are illegal under U.S. law, and it could be classified as a federal criminal offense under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act.
Well, so we got a company getting hacked by Lockbit, which is a ransomware group. And then since the company that got hacked has ties with government people, it seems like someone in the cybersecurity realm that they are connected to hacked back. The gang, now obviously hacking back is bad news, but I'm kind of cheering for them,
Yeah, I am too. There's a lot of debate on the whole hacking back thing. Some people think that companies should be allowed to hack back so that way they don't have to pay their ransom, so that way they can defend their companies against ransomware groups, and that the information isn't posted online. Could you imagine a hospital employing a hacker group so that way whenever they get attacked, they can hack back so that way PHI isn't actually exposed? That would probably save people a lot of money. However, according to US law, that's technically a crime and you could prison, which is why Entrust is saying, we know nothing. We're not saying anything, because if it is Entrust that is hacking back, they're committing a felony. We're cheering for them, because if you would cheer for vigilante because it's social right, but technically illegal, and they can't take credit for it.
Indeed. It goes back to the age-old adage of fight fire with fire. Now, this is only going to make Lockbit more angry at Entrust, so it's just going to lead to more attacks down the line, which is probably why hacking back is illegal as well. But, way to stand up for yourself, Entrust. Next up, the breach of Greece. Greece's largest natural gas distributor, DESFA, confirmed 1 week ago, Saturday, that they suffered a limited scope data breach and IT system outage following a cyber attack. In the public statement shared with local news outlets, DESFA explained that hackers attempted to infiltrate its network but were thwarted by the quick response of its IT team. However, some files and data were accessed and possibly leaked, so there was a network intrusion, even if it was limited. DESFA assures its customers that this incident won't impact the gas supply and that all input and output points operate at normal capacity. The company states it has informed the police's cybercrime department, the National Data Protection Office, the National Defense Department, and the Ministry of Energy and Environment to help resolve the matter at minimal time and consequence. A breach that happened on a municipality, but it was thwarted. Dun, dun, dun.
Are they a municipality, though? Because they're a gas company. They just happen to be in Greece. Right, it's a natural gas distributor, so that would be a company.
I mean, potentially. Right? Doesn't say one way or another. Probably a contractor, so it wouldn't be a company. Either way, doesn't matter. What does matter is
prices of gas are going to be okay.
The IT department stayed ahead of the time, which is something you usually don't hear about.
Yeah, so good job, DESFA, for a job well done. Sorry that you got hacked in the first place, but good job on making it minimal and informing everyone who could be affected, including different government positions. I feel like in the United States, it's a lot more hush-hush because companies don't want to admit what happened, especially larger companies that have a large impact on the economy. But I appreciate the transparency of Greece's natural gas distributor.
I think
breath of fresh air.
I think any big company that says that they have to say that they're hacked, number one, and they'll take some time. But I think any company that has a successful defense against a attempt would definitely say that they did it because it's good press for cybersecurity. So I think that even if it is across the entire side of the world, I think that in the US they would do the same thing. But good for them.
Next up, vendetta against Italian textiles. Founded in 1891, Sfera designs and sells Italian-made luxury linen products, including luxury sheets, table linens, and bedding collections. Sfera announced that it has identified a cyber incident on April 24th. The threat actor had access to its servers for roughly 2 weeks prior to that. Impacted personal information includes addresses, passport information, driver's license data, social security numbers, financial account information, medical and/or health insurance data, electronic/digital signatures, and account credentials. Based on the type of compromised data, it appears that it mainly belongs to Sfera employees. However, the company has not shared any information on the number of impacted individuals. Now, why would a company have the passport information of their employees?
It would probably be something that you have to bring two in the US. You got to bring 2 different IDs, right? So driver's license and that social security number, or passport. So maybe it's the same kind of deal in Italy, but either way, the fact that a textile company was breached is kind of like almost a little funny because it's like, they make blankets, people. Why are they hacking them? But it goes to show you hackers will go after any organization, doesn't matter what vertical you're a part of, because all they care about is getting paid, and the way that they get paid is either through ransomware attacks or selling personal information on the dark web. And in this case,
that's probably the personal information around. I don't know, maybe a hacker had like an allergic reaction to one of the fabrics that this company used and decided to have this company be like its next victim, or maybe they just really don't like Italy and because they're from a different European country and it's a whole rivalry. I don't know. You never know with these things. It could be very petty.
It's true. Hackers find ways to get upset about a lot of things. So we'll see what happens. Good luck to the textile company. Is Italy known for textiles?
I mean, there's cashmere, right?
Ooh, cashmere. Nice.
Right.
Nice.
So I feel like, yes, it's known for food and
the
like
old
textiles.
cashmere smear, and that's what the hacker group pulled on them. The old cashmere smear. Anyways, that's it for this week's wrap up of your weekly healthcare news. I'm Matt Moneypenny.
And I'm Elliot Meltzer.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Bandage Podcast produced by eTactics.